The Hero and the Hidden by Kirikwat on AO3. Episode 30, Chapter 26. I Cry, or Don't Make Noise at All. Naomasa threw his notebook across the soundproof interrogation room, screaming. He had so much to do, and he couldn't find time for it all. He collapsed to his knees, laying his head on the floor and breathing heavily. He had to find a permanent residence for Hitoshi, one where he wouldn't be muzzled and bullied for something he couldn't control, one where he could get the help he needed in a safe environment. Tsukauchi wanted to take him in so much, but it wouldn't work. He was busy all day, and with his current caseload, he had no time for a child. The kid still hung around the office, stealing snacks from his coworkers and doing readings that Naomasa assigned to him to keep him up to date with classes. Eraserhead visited on occasion, but claimed he couldn't take the kid due to his hero work. Heroes didn't have kids for fear of them being used against them by villains in hostage situations. There was Endeavor, who had a kid Hitoshi's age, but the man was so hell-bent on beating Toshinori that he was never an attentive father. In the past reports, he had been brought up from one of his children, but they were proven false and dismissed by the Hero Commission. Toshinori was now in the hospital with a massive organs damage and internal bleeding, and it was a wonder he wasn't already dead. The doctors had done all they could, but his body would never fully recover. He was still in a coma, and no one knew who had inflicted these injuries on him. He had come stumbling into the station, halfway to death before collapsing in a small form on top of Naomasa. He still hadn't had time to visit him in the hospital yet. Then, there was the monster terrorizing the streets. He had never allowed the release of the recording, for fear of heightened emotions, but someone had sent it in. He had done his best to ease minds, but it seems he has failed. Tensions have never been higher, and more villains were confessing by the day to remove themselves from the streets. More still fought in the streets, claiming they were unafraid of the beast, killing each other in senseless duels. Now, he had a teenager on the streets who refused to give Naomasa a name. He was dangerous by the way he held himself without care, but had tensed up upon seeing Naomasa's badge. The conversation had ended once he had told Naomasa what had happened, before he vanished into the city again. He had lost a vigilante on the streets, who was leaving villains barely alive on the streets, zip-tied with a sticky note on the person. "Are you true heroes?" it always said. The same thing, over and over. They were taunting the hero society, and they were strong. And then, the kid. The fucking kid. Izuku had been missing for just over a week now, and even with the reports from the teenager, he hadn't found a single lead. Hitoshi still refused to talk to him about what happened, and the teenager had only known Izuku for a day at most. It made no sense. Why would any villain be after a quirkless kid? Especially one as young as Izuku. Unless someone had gained access to his notebooks, all of which Naomasa had with him. Did his analysis skill get out another way? And he still had Toga hiding out on the streets, occasionally finding more victims with their blood drained to right before death. She could become anyone, if she had their blood, and it was near impossible to find her. Had she told someone on the streets about Izuku? Was it purposeful, or an accident for a child? And then, the villains who had kidnapped Izuku. He had never heard of a teleportation quirk that matched these specifics, and all quirks were required to be registered at the age of 5. If his body was made of mist, there should have been some record of him, but there was nothing. Fucking nothing. He pulled at his hair in frustration. He could feel tears streaming down his face as he ran out of time. Time was such a fickle thing. Izuku could already be dead. Toshinori could already be dead. This creature could have snuck out again. Hitoshi would be left without a home. The vigilante could have turned into a full-time villain by injuring a hero. The teenager on the streets could be the next kidnapping target. The villains could have a larger plan he couldn't stop. He heard the door creak open before shutting gently. "How are you holding up, Tsukauchi?" Aizawa asked, sitting down on the floor near him. He chuckled through his tears, rubbing at his eyes. "I'm having the time of my life," he said, sniffling. He hadn't let himself feel anything for so long, and it hurts as they all bubbled to the surface. He hated letting himself cry. Aizawa scoffed, adjusting his scarf. "Look, I'm not good with the whole emotion things, but it would help if you talked about it." Naomasa shook his head, sitting up to face Aizawa. "It's just a lot, at once. There's no point in talking about it. It won't fix anything." He shakily stands up and grabs his notebook from across the room, before returning to sit by Aizawa. He imagined all his emotions, entering a bottle, shoving the cork in place. His job required him to be factual. Emotions weren't a help, but a hindrance. He could deal with them by himself when he had time. "What's that?" Aizawa asked, grabbing it from his hands and flipping to the first page. Naomasa pointed at the start of his notes for the case, before sighing. "I found someone on the streets who saw Izuku get taken by villains. Well, more like he found me. He took Izuku in for just a day, and Izuku was taken from Tokoyama Beach the next night." Aizawa hums, reading through each line carefully. He pauses on one, shaking his head. "This says that Izuku was covered in blood and vomit when your informant found him. Similar to when you found him." Aizawa points to the added note. "What does this mean?" Naomasa leans his head against the wall, groaning. If Aizawa wanted to help in this case, he needed to know the full story. "I haven't been completely honest with you about everything," he said, turning to look at Izuku. He says, turning to look at Aizawa. He raised his eyebrow in a question before Naomasa could continue. "Izuku isn't quirkless." Aizawa frowned, looking down at the notes, trying to put together an impossible puzzle. "Why is he registered that way in the database, then?" Naomasa nodded, sighing heavily. "I'll explain everything I know, but I need you to not interrupt me, okay?" Aizawa nods. "When I found Izuku a year ago, he was covered in the blood of his dead mom, whom he had killed." Shouta shook his head, trying to piece together all that Tsukauchi had just told him. "You found out that this kid had quirk. That was stress-induced, nonetheless. And you didn't get him a quirk counselor? You just buried the truth instead of confronting it." Tsukauchi winced. "When you put it that way, it does sound bad." Shouta wanted to scream at him. He wanted to smack him upside the head until he understood what a stupid thing that was to do. Instead, he just tightened his fist and shook his head. "I'm taking Hitoshi in as a foster to adopt." Tsukauchi looked at him, startled, tapping his fingers to his knee. "Why? You said you couldn't have a kid with your hero work." Shouta scowled. "You clearly can't be trusted to take care of a kid. You let Izuku believe his power to be a curse by ignoring it. You didn't get him the mental help to stop his scratching. He can't just fucking stop it. It comes from a mental issue, for crying out loud." Tsukauchi opened his mouth, but Shouta held up his hand. "I'm not done. You visited Izuku and saw clear avoidance of certain questions as well as signs of neglect, like Toga's hair. And now, instead of getting Hitoshi to see a specialist, you've let him run around a police station that's constantly housing all sorts of villains. The kid has major trauma from being abandoned and has deep-seated issues with his quirk. He only just started talking in full sentences again. I am taking him in, and that's the end of it." Tsukauchi frowned, clutching his hands together. "Me and Midnight didn't see the signs. We wanted to hope for the best, for the good of the kids." Shouta stands up furiously, grabbing at a scarf. "Don't worry. I haven't forgotten about Koyama's role in this. I will be having a word with her as well. You didn't want that for the good of the kids. You wanted it to be done the easy way. I'm taking the kid home with me now. Shouta opens the door and slams it as he stomps away. He takes a deep breath as the officer stares at him, concerned. Whipping his hands on his pants, he walks toward Tsukauchi's office, opening the door slowly. Hitoshi sits up suddenly, staring at Shouta with wide eyes. Hi, Eraserhead. He signs, slowly, blinking the sleep from his eyes. Sorry, kid, Shouta says, moving to sit beside him. Did I wake you? Hitoshi shakes his head. No, as he rubs his eyes. I've been up for hours. He signs, yawning. Shouta chuckles, running his hands through his hair. So, kid, I want to talk to you and get your thoughts on something. Hitoshi instantly straightens, a wary look in his eyes. Damn, the kid has so many traumas. Are you sending me to another home? He asked, making direct eye contact with Shouta. He had never been more grateful for the ASL and JSL lessons Hizashi had given to him and Kayama. Hitoshi could benefit from learning JSL as well. Shouta shakes his head slightly, humming. Not exactly, Hitoshi. I want to take you in as a member of my family. It's just me and Hizashi in our apartment, so it's not much. Hitoshi stares at him wide-eyed. He blinked a few times as Shouta lets the words sink in. You want me? Hitoshi asks in both sign and Japanese. Shouta nodded, tapping his fingers together. Only if you agree. Nothing is being forced on you this time. Hitoshi nodded quickly, jumping on Shouta and hugging him tightly. Shouta gasped, wrapping his arms around the kid gently, making sure not to suffocate him. The kid buries his face in Shota's scarf, his body shaking with tears. Thank you, he whispers, hugging Shouta tighter. That is so sweet. Okay. I think, if I remember correctly, I was kind of pissed off that, Tsukauchi wasn't seeing anything. I'm like, notice it. Maybe he's gonna notice. No! Type of situation. Shouta made me realize and open my eyes. Yeah, no, he was being a little bit of an idiot. That whole, for the good of the kids, I wanted it to work for the kids. No, selfishly, you also just wanted it to be the easy way, Which also, Tsukauchi's frustrations right now with having too much on him and not being able to do enough, and because of this, he can't do everything all at once. Therefore, he's gonna have to pick and choose which is his priorities. And in choosing that, he's going to have to abandon some, because if he doesn't do that, none will get done. None of the cases will get done. Yeah, some of the cases are interlinked. But it doesn't mean he could focus on both of them at the same time. You know what I mean? It's that type of situation where you have to choose. I'm glad that Hitoshi is, gonna get the care he needs. I love myself a good, Dadzawa. Personally, I like Dadzawa when it comes to Aizawa adopting Izuku, but I do like Aizawa adopting his Hitoshi as well. Don't get me wrong, it's not like I hate this absolutely. No, I prefer the other type. But also, if Shota's taking in Hitoshi, I do not want him taking in Izuku right now, especially considering this is a Shingeki fic. No. Just no. No, thank you. I could have continued on, but I have very limited time to record, and I want to make sure that I'm on top of things so that you guys aren't left without, without a recording, without a upload. So, I hope you don't mind. 10-ish minute, 10 to 15 minute videos. But everyday uploads. I know I'm gonna soon post a one-shot and see if that one-shot could, I want to just, sorry, I'm sporadic. Actually, no, I think by this time the one-shot would have been posted. Never mind, I won't tell you that. I'm not sure. This is gonna be posted the 4th. Yes, the 4th. I'm just getting my shit together right now, okay? I'm a little sporadic, as you can tell. As always, my raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.